Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Bearable Bull here. And I got this aggressively average content for you today. As ladies and gentlemen, XRP's been on an explosive tirade over the past couple days, reaching upwards of 58 cents, now hovering at the 55-cent mark. I don't think we're even close to done, as this judge decision looms. The price action on the charts signal to all of us that we still have room to run. Before I get into anything else though, I have to say to my OnlyFans community, your DMs have been fully answered, as I've been reorganizing the DM structure in there. Video responses have been sent out, as some of you really loved the last call that was made that found a 15 to 20% move happening the same day. For as much assistance from me as possible, the link to that is down in the description below. As ladies and gentlemen, we have a powerful call that was made by Waters Above Crypto. If we can pass a certain resistance level with XRP, there is nothing but open runway all the way up to 90 cents. And I want you all to hear him say that, so you could begin salivating.
So this adds another piece of data for you guys to consider regarding continuation of this automatic rally. So we have right here this intersection coming in at about 60 cents of 60 cents. So this adds another piece of data for you guys to consider regarding continuation of this automatic rally. So we have right here this intersection coming in at about 60 cents, 61 cents. If we were to see a closure on the weekly for XRP above 60, 61 cents even, to be more confident, there's pretty much thin air until 91 cents. So this is a very, very important level. And one thing I'm also seeing is a weekly W pattern that's pretty massive. If I go in a linear scale and I do a conservative pull neckline to the lows, and then I just move this measured move up to the neckline, you see it puts us somewhere around 75, 76 cents. And that would definitely be my next target area to consider, because it's the 0.5 fib. That 0.5 fib is everything after you get above that 382, because that's typically your rejection level, which could lead to what we call a dead cat bounce. I think XRP has more juice in it than that. I do see more, but I'm just letting you know the technicals here. I'm teaching the lesson of how this fib tool works. So be considerate of that.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to stay vigilant of that. Upwards price momentum is in our cards for the XRP army. And with that happening with the charts, we also see that Gary Gensler's over here testifying to try and get more money for SEC funding. He stated crypto is a field that has a significant amount of non-compliance. We're stretched thin. We've increased resources, but we could always use more. Oh, really? Here we have members of Congress stating they're looking forward to seeing him. April 18th is when Gary Gensler gets grilled in front of Congress. Tom Emmer and other members have fired their warning shots. And trust me when I tell all of you, I'm looking forward for Gary to be put in his place. Now guys, that being said, we had a legendary appearance from John Deaton and Jeremy Hogan talking the Ripple case, a library transcript, Coinbase, and more. But I pulled specifically 2 different clips that I think is going to bring a lot of clarity to every single one of you about what to expect. We're reaching a climax of a moment with this case, and the 2 best in the industry and these legendary lawyers in the XRP community break it down perfectly.
Do you think that Judge Torres is aware of what's going on in the library and everything that's happening? Do you think she reads the comments by the judge or the train? Or do you think, hey, that's another judge and another circuit? I don't have to worry about it. What's your take on that?
So I don't think judges live in a vacuum. I think if an issue is a big enough issue, I think they realize that there's something important in here. And certainly when you have thousands of people listening to some, I don't want to say stupid, but some stupid hearing that we had a couple of years ago on some issue of discovery, and you have thousands of people listening in on it, that kind of cues the judges in that this is a big deal. The only other thing I can think of, because who knows what Judge Torres is or isn't doing, but the other thing that a lot of people haven't thought of is, these federal court judges have, I think, 2 law clerks. And law clerks are usually really smart kids that get out of law school and they go work for a judge for 2 or 3 years. They get to put that on their resume. It's a very good thing. They get hired at big law firms. They make a lot of money. But these would be guys or girls in their 20s, late 20s, maybe early 30s. And
great point.
You can't underestimate the amount of influence that the law clerk might or might not have on this case. So the judge would make the decision, but don't underestimate that a law clerk who's in their late 20s, maybe even owns crypto, maybe their brother mines Bitcoin, could be doing the research and actually writing the opinion under the judge's guidance.
Now, that's an important point for all of you to understand. This judge understands how massive and how important this case is. And I can't stress enough that 75,000 XRP Army lawsuit against the SEC, represented by John Deaton, is so important. The magnitude of this case will send shock waves across the industry, and this judge is astutely aware of the impact she's gonna have. That influence that Hogan stated about younger members helping to give transcripts and guidance is also important, as they may be more tech forward. And I want you all to keep that in mind as we proceed to the next clip.
I mean, just for the viewers, you need a jury when you have to weigh this testimony and decide which one is more credible. And that's really what you need a jury for. And I don't think that the investment of money prong is the thing that will be sent to a jury.
Okay, what about the second factor is obviously the common enterprise, and it's something that you and I've poked holes at, and others have as well, of the SEC's theory. Do you think that there's enough for her to decide on common enterprise, or do you think that that could be a factor sent to a jury?
I don't think that's the one either. I think that the Revit case is pretty clear, and we have 10, 12 judges in the past in the crypto space that we can look at that have made that decision based upon the facts in front of them. So I don't think that's the one either.
Okay, and then it's a 2-pronged test. That's why some people call it a 4-factor test and some people call it a 3-factor. In the first prong of the third is a reasonable expectation of profit derived from the efforts of Ripple, basically. What about that factor? Is that one that you think could be teed up for a jury or no?
That's the one I think would be the one. If she's going to send it to a jury, I think that would be the one because of your work. We have a lot of we have affidavits that were submitted. We have counter facts from the SEC, not many, but there are some there. And so if I was the judge and I said, you know what, I'm not going to rule on this, this is going to go to a jury, this is probably the thing that I want the jury to rule on. What did an XRP purchaser back in 2017 think when he or she was buying XRP?
Okay. Now, and then obviously we talked about fair notice. Do you agree with Ripple that if she were to say that Ripple sold XRP as an investment contract in a certain period of time, do you think then it's a jury trial on whether Ripple had fair notice, or do you think the judge could summarily decide one way or the other that they did or didn't have fair notice?
It's a good question. I mean, Ripple obviously took a risk because they didn't argue fair notice other than to say it's an issue of fact for the jury to decide. I think let me just hedge my bets a little here. If the judge does send it to the jury, it'll be the SEC's fault because they brought in Larson and the other executive, I can't remember, Garlinghouse, I'm sorry. So, yeah, they brought in Garlinghouse and Larson, and
you conveniently forget the guy that can only revel your facial hair.
He's only the CEO, right? So anyway, because they brought him in, what the fair notice defense as to what they were thinking and when they were selling their XRP, I think lends itself to something that a jury could decide. And when you have a piece of the case going to trial, judges always think of judicial efficiency, right? So they're more likely to send the other piece, which is the Ripple piece, also to trial and say, you know what, since we're going to have a jury figure out what Larson and Garlinghouse were thinking about back in those days, we're also going to let's let them also figure out what Ripple was doing back in those days as well.
Which goes back to something that I think you and I agreed on very early in the case, which was charging the two executives in a non-fraud case was a very big mistake.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that. I think the SEC, if they could go back in time, I think would also probably want to undo that.
All right. And we're going to wrap up, Jeremy, but my final question, I guess, is, are you surprised now that there hasn't been a settlement? And if you're surprised, do you attribute it to politics and agenda, or what do you attribute it to? Because I believe that if this case was about enforcing securities laws, it would have settled a long time ago. That's my personal opinion. So what do you think?
I thought the case would settle back in 2021, but I was naive. And as I kind of learned and looked at more cases that the SEC was involved in, I mean, all you have to do is look at this library transcript hearing. And the SEC does not operate like a regular litigant. Obviously, it's not their money. They don't care. So it's not like when I litigate against an insurance company, that insurance company has to answer to its shareholders. Why did we spend $1 million fighting over a $10,000 case? They have to explain that. The SEC obviously doesn't have to explain why they're doing what they're doing to whomever. And so they don't operate like a regular litigant.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, that right there was a significant point that we cannot overlook. The fact that the SEC is publicly funded by taxpayers. I can't believe we fund these maniacs. The fact that they're funded by taxpayer dollars makes it so they don't have to give a damn about budgets. That's why it's so important, and why I gave you the initial breakdown of how Gary wants more funding so he could waste more of our money on trying to stifle innovation and destroy retail investors. The United States right now needs to take a stand. Congress, April 18th, needs to take a stand and make there be a new day in the crypto industry. Gary Gensler needs to get fired, and I want to see it happen. Fuck the SEC and everything they stand for, and I can't stress that enough. Now guys, I'm going to give a power pivot to the direction of this video and remind you all of this clip from the SVB Bank bailout, as they're currently calling it a bailout of the 10 Chinese billionaires who had $13.3 billion in the bank. The cover story is they're saving us, but in actuality, they're buying the wealthy time to get out. And this is something else that I want to point out before I remind you of this clip. Gary Gensler is over here in the United States passing horrible ESG regulation to limit investing opportunities and make everything more pro-climate, while he's invested directly in Vanguard, has the majority of his $40 to $100 million in wealth in there. And Vanguard's over here investing in Chinese oil companies. Isn't that a profound conflict of interest? Where the hell is the accountability? Keep that in mind as this banking shit show unfolds.
It has been reported publicly that SVB had a large number of Chinese investors that are there, including some that were companies directly connected to the Chinese Communist Party. Will those individuals, companies, entities, and investors that are Chinese investors be made whole based on assessments in my banks in Oklahoma? So what I'm asking is, will my banks in Oklahoma pay a special assessment to be able to make Chinese investors whole from Silicon Valley Bank?
Uninsured investors will be made whole in that bank, and I suppose that could include foreign depositors, but I don't believe there's any legal basis to discriminate among uninsured.
And ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That admission by Janet Yellen was profound. This is the monster we're dealing with. And always have that in the back of your minds. Now guys, a familiar face, Michael S. Barr, testified at a Senate hearing yesterday But before we get into that testimony, I want you all to listen to this brief clip of a senator calling out regulators and talking up the general investing retail community. This is a major turning point in global financial history, and we are the major disruptors.
The failure of Silicon Valley Bank on the Federal Reserve's watch very clearly calls into question whether or not some of that trust was misplaced. Make no mistake, the lion's share of the blame is on incompetent bank executives. And it's outrageous that these people took bonuses and sold stock in the days leading up to the bank's failure. We should hold these executives accountable for the fullest extent of the law and claw back those bonuses and stock sales. I'm co-sponsoring a bill to do just that. But as I laid out in a letter to you, Vice Chair Barr, that, by the way, was signed by 11 other senators spanning the ideological spectrum, it's gravely concerning that retail participants, literally just regular everyday people, were able to figure out that something was wrong with Silicon Valley Bank before your regulators took appropriate action. Now, these folks don't have access to non-public information like the bank examiners do. But when people on Reddit and Twitter can spot bank mismanagement before the regulators, something is terribly wrong.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the reason I played that clip is because that message resonated with me. That is symbolic of what we, the XRP community, have been doing with this XRP case for the entire crypto industry for 2 years. That is symbolic for what the XRP community has been doing by uncovering the de-dollarization, the cracks in the SWIFT system, and the replacement of the financial system for the past 5 to 6 years. This is symbolic of what the XRP community has been doing by showcasing that XRP is in fact the chosen one relative to the Bitcoin Maxis Bitcoin. We have the documents to prove it. We have the partnerships to enable it. And we have the technology to do it. It's funny to me how I'm some anonymous fuck on the internet that nobody knows, and I was able to get this right. All of us were able to get this right before 99.9% of the planet, and it's just now that people are starting to wake the fuck up. The bank failures are the catalyst for the great awakening of people to this financial Ponzi scheme, and I really want to know how the hell this story ends. But if I'm being honest, I already know how it ends. It ends with every single one of you in the XRP community becoming the new 1%. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Bearable Bull here. Thanks for tuning in. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. And to cap off this video for today, I want you all to hear the former Ripple advisor Michael S. Barr and his testimony about the failure of SVB Bank in front of the Senate. Now guys, I'll be back tomorrow with another video.
The fact that the largest bank failure we've seen was WaMu back in the crisis. $16 billion left that bank over a 10-day period. In this case, $42 billion, the equivalent of 25 cents on every deposit, went out in 6 hours. I'm not sure at that point what regulatory structure could have prevented that. And at least from reports, it seems to me that, and I say this as somebody who used to be in the VC industry, some of the very VCs who banked for a long time at SVB may have started this run and demanded all of their ancillary companies all go out at once. So, Vice Chairman Barr, can you take us through with a little more detail, starting Wednesday night through Friday afternoon, how this happened, how we got here, and what you've seen so far?
Thank you very much, Senator. I'll start where you did, which is this is a textbook case of bank mismanagement. The risks the bank face, interest rate risk and liquidity risk, those are bread and butter banking issues. The firm was quite aware of those issues. They had been told by regulators. Investors were talking about problems with interest rate and liquidity risk publicly. and they didn't take the action necessary. They were quite vulnerable to risk, to shocks, and they didn't take the actions necessary to meet that. What happened on Wednesday night is they belatedly attempted to improve their liquidity position, and they did it in a way that spooked investors, that spooked depositors, that spooked the market. Nonetheless, on Thursday morning, things appeared calm, according to the bank's report to supervisors. But later Thursday afternoon, deposit outflows started. And by Thursday evening, we learned that more than $42 billion, as you had indicated, had rushed out of the bank. That's an extraordinary pace and scale. Federal Reserve Bank staff worked with the bank through the afternoon, evening, and overnight to try and find enough collateral that the Federal Reserve could continue discount window lending against. On Friday morning, it appeared that it might be possible to meet the outflow that was expected the day before. But that morning, the bank let us know that they expected the outflow to be vastly larger based on client requests and what was in the queue. A total of $100 billion was scheduled to go out the door that day. The bank did not have enough collateral to meet that, and therefore they were not able to actually meet their obligations to pay their depositors over the course of that day, and they were shut down.
Why do I hold XRP? Because Ripple's the chosen one to lead the new global digital payment system, and they use XRP. In 2013, the Federal Reserve began looking for faster payments options. 2 years later, an action plan was born and a federal payments task force was created. It included one company focused on crypto, Ripple. In 2014, the World Bank and Better Than Cash Alliance, which includes the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Clinton Global Initiative, and the governments of 32 countries, put out a report called The Opportunities of Digitizing Payments. 1 year later, the Better Than Cash Alliance featured one crypto company on their website, Ripple. Today, Better Than Cash Alliance and all other UN initiatives are focused on a single agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. You can see the SDGs logo on Bill Gates' lapel, world-leading companies, the Better Than Cash Alliance website, and on the UN's official exchange, Exchange. What crypto is Exchange officially utilizing for their carbon credit solution? XRP. The world will move to a new international standard for exchanging electronic messages between financial institutions by 2025 called ISO 20022. Who was the first ISO 20022 member focused on distributed ledger technology? Ripple. Who's partnered with over 300 financial institutions, including Bank of America, American Express, PNC, Santander, SBI, HSBC, Standard Chartered Bank, Bank of England, India, Singapore, Scotland, Australia, and Indonesia, the largest banks in Japan, Canada, Egypt, the Middle East, United Arab Emirates, Thailand, Morocco, Bhutan, South Korea, Brazil, and Latin America? Ripple. Who is a former employee overseeing the Federal Reserve? Ripple. A former employee overseeing the world's largest asset manager, BlackRock's digital asset division? Ripple. Leading Australia's CBDC effort? Ripple. Who hired a former Treasury of the United States? Ripple. 2 former Federal Reserve attorneys to their board? Ripple. 2 former Clinton and Obama advisors, former Minister of Defense and Economics of Germany, former business director at Swift, former Swift board member, former CFO of PayPal, former head of the DTCC, former chief business officer at Uber, former VP of Amazon, and former SEC chair on their legal team? Ripple. Who's a member of the Digital Pound Foundation, Digital Dollar Project, Digital Euro Association, Mojaloop, IMF's high-level advisory board on fintech, Hyperledger Blockchain Consortium, Open Payments Coalition, Faster Payments Council, Global Payments Steering Group, Cross-Border Working Group, International Association for Trusted Blockchain Applications, Crypto Climate Accord, University Blockchain Initiative, World Wide Web Consortium, and a featured partner of the World Economic Forum with 3 members of their team directly listed on the WF website? Ripple. Now, does Ripple and XRP sound like they're going to disappear, or do they sound like they're part of a much bigger plan? You decide.